Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Israel looks for any way to send aid to Lebanon after the tragic explosion in Beirut Tuesday. Coronavirus czar Ronnie Gamzu issues harsh warnings to the Israeli public. And finally, get ready to move your feet because for the first time in decades, members of Israel's biggest ever boy band reunite. We begin again in the north. Lebanon is beginning its 3 days of mourning now, following the devastating explosions by the port of Beirut on Tuesday.
Before, after. Signs of death and debris everywhere. This is the new reality of downtown Beirut, following massive explosions in the capital's port. The death toll from the blast now rising to at least 135, with dozens of people still missing. Over 5,000 injured, and more than 250,000 people displaced, homes left unfit to live in.
We really thought there was a bomb in the apartment, so we were all beginning to shout. No one understood what was happening. Then we took the car, we started going, but the roads were closed, so we parked the car here. And someone took us. We just did an auto stop. Someone took us. We went to Brumana just to go to the hospital because my boyfriend was bleeding, and my hand, we were like shaken up and stuff. Then we went to the hospital. Hospitals couldn't take us. There were like no rooms anymore, nothing. We went to another hospital outside of the city, and it was like people forgot about Corona. We were just bleeding. Everyone was bleeding. We couldn't move in the hospital. No one, people were helping each other. Doctors did not, it was, in my case, my hand is broken, I think. They told me it's not urgent. There are many more urgent cases. And it was horrible, really.
Meanwhile, as Lebanon struggles with this tragedy on top of an ongoing economic crisis and the coronavirus, many countries around the world are showing their solidarity, sending aid and emergency response teams, especially with several Lebanese hospitals having been hit by the blast too. Israel, for its part, putting politics aside, the Tel Aviv municipality building lighting up with the Lebanese flag in accordance with solidarity practices for tragedies around the world.
It's a very kind thing to put this flag on this building. I like to watch it. I think that the citizens seems to care about the things that happens in the world and not just here in Israel.
What can we do than hoping for the best, you know? And like I said earlier, I really just hope that they will accept this aid, this support from Israel.
Then going beyond rhetoric, Israeli leadership also working hard to transfer medical equipment and aid to Lebanon via UN intermediaries. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Israel differentiates between governments and people.
ראשית, אני שולח בשם ממשלת ישראל תנחומים לעם בלבנון. אתמול היה בלבנון אסון גדול מאוד, ואנחנו ערוכים להושיט סיוע הומניטרי ללבנון כבני אדם לבני אדם.
As for the cause of the blast, Lebanese leaders are ruling out any sort of attack, shifting blame instead to negligence. Over 2,400 tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate allegedly was stored improperly in a warehouse by the port, supposedly belonging to Iranian proxy terror group Hezbollah. The material had been in the warehouse for 6 years, though, after being confiscated by a Russian cargo ship in 2013. Customs and port officials having asked several times for it to be removed for this exact reason. Still, several Beirut port officials are being placed under house arrest as the Lebanese authorities investigate further. Some experts, including from Israel, adding that cheap pyrotechnics are likely to blame, supposedly going off due to the heat and igniting the explosive ammonium nitrate stored next door.
In related news, the tragedy in Beirut on Tuesday is drawing renewed focus and criticisms against Iranian terror proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah. The terror group has been actively stockpiling Iranian precision-guided missiles and other such munitions for years, including through the port of Beirut. In fact, Israeli sources and military experts report that Hezbollah has established nearly 30 missile launching sites in Beirut itself, while managing several weapons storage facilities in Beirut and other population centers. Hezbollah also maintains its own private terminal at the Beirut port, through which they regularly unload weapons that do not undergo customs inspections and are then stored at the port for undisclosed periods of time before being distributed to Hezbollah bases and storage facilities across the nation. So with the Lebanese public now infuriated with their leadership, how exactly will the blast in Beirut affect the ruling class? Joining us to discuss is Middle East expert and chair of Professors for a Strong Israel, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us today. Now, let's start with the public's perception of the government in Lebanon. How has that changed throughout the crises in Lebanon and now with this explosion?
Well, it all depends on whom they blame. So far, they are blaming the former government, which accepted a cargo of nitrat ammonium to be stored in the harbor of Beirut. I don't buy this story because this is not a material which explodes so easily. You need to really detonate it in a way which nobody did it. What happened actually is, in my view, is that there was a big storage or warehouse full of ammunition and explosives and most probably fuel for missiles, which is very combustible. And in the heat of August, and yesterday it was very hot, and the whole storage or the warehouse is made of iron, it blew up. And this is what happened. But Hezbollah wants to cover it, and they announced less than an hour after the whole blast that the whole thing was because of this nitrate, and in order to cover the real reason. Hezbollah's guardians were in the spot in order to make sure that nobody's coming there. Why did they do it? And it is well known that Hezbollah actually controls the harbor, and they were using it in order to import all kinds of things which are too dangerous to import through Damascus airport, because Israel keeps attacking the warehouses there in Damascus.
So Dr. Kedar, Dr. Kedar, with that in mind, how will Hezbollah's hold on the government of Lebanon be affected?
Hezbollah holds the government by the throat, and they know it very well. And they are very cautious, because if they say something which Hezbollah doesn't like, Hezbollah might do to them what it did to Rafik Hariri, and maybe tomorrow we'll know exactly who did it, and many others, 20 and Shidiak, many of the Lebanese were blown up mysteriously, of course by Hezbollah, because they were talking against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah didn't like them. So this is the way how Hezbollah shuts up the mouths of people whom they don't like. So people are very cautious, and people will say whatever Hezbollah dictates to them to say, only because they want to keep their heads connected to their shoulders.
I see. All right. So my final question, if you can quickly answer, Israel is trying to send aid. Do you think that this incident, as terrible as it is, might actually bring the two countries any closer?
Between Israel and Lebanon?
Yes.
As long as Hezbollah controls Lebanon, and so far this is the situation, and it's not a new situation.
Okay, Dr. Kedar, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Returning now to Israel, new coronavirus guidelines are being handed down ahead of the weekend. Coronavirus czar, Professor Ronnie Gamzu, going live today, directly addressing the public with dire warnings. Nittany Manson reports.
המטרה של ממשלת ישראל היא להוריד את התחלואה לרמה של מאות לכיוון של הראשון בספטמבר. זאת משימה קשה מאוד, מטרה קשה מאוד להשגה, אבל זאת המטרה. צריך להבין שזה חשוב לא רק בצד הבריאותי, זה חשוב גם בצד הכלכלי. בסופו של דבר, הכיוון הוא שכרגע במדינת ישראל אנחנו מחכים עם צעדים דרסטיים של הגבלות שכאלו, מתוך הערכה של מצב החברה ומצב הכלכלי.
This is our last chance. Israeli coronavirus czar Professor Ronnie Gamzu telling the public that if the morbidity rate doesn't drop fast, Israel will be obliged to consider restrictions, including possible local or nationwide lockdowns. The Health Ministry's Director General, Hezi Levy, likewise acknowledging that the lockdowns are a tool that can dramatically reduce morbidity, but at a dramatically high price that no one wants to pay. The opposite, Israel looking even now for ways to reopen the economy as much as possible, weekend virus restrictions being greatly reduced, and international air travel being set to resume with green countries by August 16th. Public parks and other such outdoor areas are also set to be reopened by the weekend. Meanwhile, Professor Gamzu outlining his new policy for so-called red and orange cities in Israel, including the use of IDF and Homefront Command.
סגירה של ערים כאלו ברמת סוציו כזו לא תמיד עובדת. היא לא עבדה בפעמים הקודמות. ולכן הצעתי תוכנית אחרת, לקחת את אותם ערים, שזה הרבה יותר מורכב, אדומות וכתומות, ולהיכנס פנימה בתהליך אינטנסיבי של שיפור התהליכים בתוך העיר.
The spread of COVID-19 is still rising at an alarming rate, though. Total cases in Israel increasing by nearly 1,700 in the past 24 hours to a total of over 78,500. 24,576 actively sick, 345 in serious condition, and the death toll holding steady at 569.
So with the quickly evolving challenges on the ground with the coronavirus, the question remains, is Israel doing enough? Joining us to discuss is Professor Miriam Weinberger, chair of the Israeli Society for Infectious Diseases and the head of the Infectious Diseases Unit at the Shamir Medical Center. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, we are witnessing frequent changes in the guidelines that the public receives. What do you think are the ideal steps that should be taken by the Ministry of Health?
Well, I have a lot of faith in the new projector, the new project manager, Professor Ronnie Gamzu. I think he's charismatic, he's authoritative, and he knows what he's doing. And in order to decrease the rates of infection and to flatten the curves and even bend the curves, we need to, first of all, to restore confidence, the confidence in the leadership of the Ministry of Health and in the leadership of the government, because we were in a very, very confusing situation where we were told in the morning one thing and in the evening another thing. And then coronavirus was totally involved with politics, and we lost the trust of the public.
Ronnie Gamzu, as you mentioned, has certainly managed, at least seemingly, to increase the public trust with the government's guidelines. But with that in mind, why do you think there are still so many people who are refusing to follow the guidelines? Most recently, some of the protests against the government, and of course, even last night, the very, very large ultra-Orthodox wedding.
I think that the confusion is and the mistrust is not only because of the health situation, but also because of the economic situation. They should go hand in hand, restoring the faith in restoring the faith in the leadership in the health situation, in the corona leadership, and restoring some financial security.
All right, Professor Weinberger, thank you so much for your time. In other news, the economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic is wide-reaching and severe, but there is a way that those of you watching at home can help.
Israel is a country filled with years of history, culture, and unbeatable beauty. Today, we're going to take a deeper look into 3 major cities in the Holy Land: Jerusalem, Bat Yam, and Tzfat. All 3 of these hold their own unique aspects to them, whether it's their history, markets, beaches, or mountains. But unfortunately, not everything that seems beautiful on the outside describes the truth on the inside.
Well, Jerusalem, as we all know, is the capital city of the State of Israel. It's also capital city of the Jewish world, and it's a beautiful city. It's a city which is 3,000-year-old, of incredible innovation, of incredible infrastructural development. But unfortunately, Jerusalem is a city with many contrasts, and one of the hidden things that you don't see when you walk around on Jaffa Street is the incredible amount of poverty that there is in the city, especially children going hungry. So the city of Jerusalem, of course, has an obligation to take care of its almost 1 million citizens. We're the largest city in the country. We have a welfare department that works not alone, but with non-profit organizations that have dedicated their lives to combating poverty. And one of the organizations that we work with and that we're proud to work with is Yad Ezra Shulamit, because this is an organization that's been dealing with hunger and poverty for many, many years. It's their main focus, and unfortunately, we need them to be our partners here in our city.
Tzfat is not only one of Israel's holiest sites, but it's also one of the northernmost and elevated cities in the country. And considering tourism has come to a complete halt due to the coronavirus pandemic, many of the people that live in Tzfat have unfortunately become unemployed and in need of major help. The coastal city of Bat Yam is just a 10-minute drive from Tel Aviv and is home to some of the most beautiful beaches in the country. Often, this city is overshadowed by cities like Herzliya and Netanya, but Bat Yam has its own special charm to it that people can feel instantly once they come for a visit. On the outside, the city might look beautiful, but the struggles are just as real here.
The last few months with the corona crisis has been especially difficult. We have a whole set of people who were never poor before and now have fallen into poverty. And of course, the children suffer more than anybody. And so we have so many friends and supporters abroad who love Israel. And I turn to them at this time of need to help organizations that are helping feed people on the ground every single day.
Help Yad Ezra Shulamit feed the poor of Israel.
Moving on, it's been 20 years since the most significant boy band ever to come out of Israel separated. But now 2 members of the High Five band, Michael Harpaz and Eyal Shachar, are reuniting for the first time, releasing a new joint song. Let's take a look.
פנס רחוק מאיר והמבט שמסנבר כמו שאת נוגעת מודלתות סגורות אני בטוח מקבל את כל מה שתתני.
All right, and now, of course, I'm joined with Eyal Shachar and Michael Harpaz. Thank you guys so much for being here today. First of all, what is the name of that new song, and what can you tell us about it?
You want to start? Come on.
The name of the song is called Mi Ani. It was written by Eyal Shachar and Sarah Chagai. Eyal also wrote the music, produced by Ronnie Gamzu, with an amazing video that was directed by Yishai Karni and starring Orel Tzabari.
Orel Tzabari, the clown?
The clown.
He's amazing, by the way.
He's
amazing.
He's incredible. All right, and so what was kind of the process of creating Mi Ani?
Eyal had a song that he had sort of kept in his drawer for
10 years.
10 years, which he originally thought he was going to give to someone like Eyal Golan or something. Eyal has penned quite a few big hits in Israel. Sheket Shenishar, Shirimayim song.
You're so kind to me, really.
Got her in 3rd place at the Eurovision, basically made her career.
Fourth place.
4th place, excuse me. Anyway, so when we decided to do something together, he said, I have the perfect song.
Wow. All right, so,
Yeah, that's exactly the same word.
So what is it, okay, you've been writing these songs, you're both composers, who've been working for a long time outside of High Five since then. What was the process of maybe what was it like working together again, I should ask?
It was actually a very natural thing to do. We've been performing together since forever.
We're old.
We're old. We're ancient.
Ancient.
And it seems for us like the perfect thing to do, like the perfect match. And it's very natural. Yeah. Feels natural.
How did you kind of come to the idea of collaborating again?
He wanted to sing a duet with me. What can I say?
Right, for years. Honestly, when we first met, the first day of the auditions for High Five, and we didn't know we were going to be in the band, and we said that, okay, well, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, well, maybe we'll do something together. That was 25 years ago.
I can remember that.
And then when High Five had an attempt at a reunion a few years back, and when that didn't pan out, before this major tragedy ensued, there was a sort of a time period of a year there where everything was fine, but just the group wasn't happening. Eyal and I had already been working together because of the group, so let's just get in the studio and see if we can do something, the two of us.
Right.
And then we had this major tragedy that happened to the group with our friend who drowned. Yeah, he saved his niece and he drowned doing it, saved her life. And then we stopped working entirely about, anything to do with that stuff. And we waited about three years or so, and we felt enough time had passed we could kind of pick up.
Right. So, I'm watching Miani, I'm watching the video with the clown who is watching himself crying, and then later, at a dinner where he's clearly separated from the rest of the crowd. Does that have anything to do with that tragedy? Was that inspired maybe in any way?
Well, I don't think it has some sort of.
You wrote the song 10 years before.
Yeah, but we're talking about video.
Well, the video, and maybe I don't know if maybe the inspirations.
It's interesting to hear. Everyone has their own sort
interpretation.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Like if you were to hear the song without seeing the video,
right,
you might think an entirely different thing about the song. You cannot unsee the video, though.
No.
I mean, the video was made.
It's very powerful.
Was made in a very.
He is very powerful.
Yeah. We tried to take a metaphor of who he, in his life, he's a comedian. He's a sidekick to a very famous YouTube influencer. Wow. So we sort of made a metaphor of his life, and he's sort of like peeling away.
Wow.
The
layer by layer.
That's amazing. All right. So finally, High Five was huge in Israel, and even after the band disbanded, you both continued, as we said, to work in the local music industry. Eyal, you wrote one of the songs that represented Israel at Eurovision, as we said, came in 4th place. How aware are you guys of your impact on Israeli culture?
Well, I think considering the pop music in Israel, I think we have a very good impact on that. Like a major, I think.
Sure, a major bookmark in Israeli pop.
How does that like sit in your head when you're?
They still play. I mean, we just got our every quarter they send out the Akum royalty breakdown of songs that were played. We're both tied to, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 songs that are consistently played on the radio in Israel
on a regular basis.
Yeah. Wow, all right, so you have this duet, you have this new song. Is there more collaboration in the future? Do you have more songs or maybe a full-length album that's coming out in the works?
I want to keep Michael a little bit in the blur. Just, I don't want to...
Must keep me guessing.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I wake up every day. I'm hoping to get a text.
Are we doing something? Songs in the treasure chest buried
We have some.
Your histories together, your skills together, and obviously...
And we're very funny together, by the way.
And you're very
hilarious.
Especially you.
I know. Thank you, Michael.
All right, well, the song, I think, speaks for itself. You guys are incredible.
Thank you.
And I know that there are a ton of people who are very, very excited for anything that you guys are doing together. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be warm with average lows of 75 Fahrenheit or 24 degrees Celsius. And then over the weekend, you can expect clear to partly cloudy skies with highs rising sharply to an average of 97 degrees Fahrenheit or 36 degrees Celsius. And before we go, let's take a look at a very special message for today's tubing.
لبيروت من قلوبنا سلام لك يا بيروت سلام لعروس البحر اصمدي فنحن معك من جبال الجليل الأعلى.
أتمنى السلام والشفاء العاجل للشعب اللبناني من إسرائيل.
قبل ما يكون بيننا حواجز واختلافات إحنا بتجمعنا الإنسانية. من إسرائيل قلبنا مع الشعب اللبناني.
שמעתי מה שהתרחש בביירות. ליבי נורא כואב, ליבי יוצא אליכם. אני רוצה לשלוח לכם מסר של אהבה, של תמיכה ממני ומעוד הרבה מאוד ישראלים. אנחנו יודעים שארצכם הנפלאה תוכל להתגבר על האסון הזה. אוהבים אתכם מישראל, תשמרו על עצמכם.
All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.41 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.